Hello, my dear friend, and welcome to the Spiritually Engineered Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the human experience from a spiritual perspective. Come on in, and I invite you to stay. So it's about that time of the year, the end of the calendar year, as we approach the upcoming new year. And for this episode, my friend, I would like to invite you to grab either a pad and pencil, like paper and pencil, or even perhaps a computer, whatever's your preference of jotting down thoughts, ideas, and things like that. And I just want you to, I'm inviting you to go ahead and to do that. Because of the time where we're at right now, I think it's a good opportunity to set some time for ourselves to evaluate. But I always, for myself, when I'm in this process of evaluating that I'm always working on, is to always approach it with a sense of compassion and patience. This isn't about like, oh, what's wrong with me or blah, blah, blah. It's not about that. It's to be detached and to look at things from a bird's eye perspective. Much like it's like imagining stepping into the shoes, so to speak, of our spirit guides and what they see, because they have that big picture, detached point of view. So that's something I'm asking of you for this episode to do for yourself, and feel free to do it or not. I mean, it's up to you, but I think I think it'd be cool if we did it together in this episode here. So 2025 is about to wrap up pretty soon. And in other spiritual news, we're still in the current energy of Spear of Inspiration. And for those that don't know, is that on September 1st through October 30, 31st, whichever is the last day in August, there's an energy that we all move through globally. And the people at the Way Shores College were to channel insights and channel insights from spirits to distill the information, the impressions down to a phrase or a key word to get a sense of the theme, the energy that we're moving through. And it's Spear of Inspiration that we're currently in right now. And let's see how I want to approach this, because I have some things for you that I want to invite you to do. So, like I said, if you had a paper and pencil or pen, whatever's your preference, there's a couple questions I want you to think about. So question number one, what has been your highlights for 2025? And I'll chime in here for myself. And I think so, a lot of some of the highlights, and I'm going to say this, and you probably might be in the same boat. When it comes to try to even attempt to evaluate one's own year, there's a lot of things that I know for me that I'm not going to remember. and honestly, that's okay. And it's something I'm telling myself as well, too, to remind myself it's no big deal, but just pay attention to at least, we're going through the questions, guidance suggestions for you, my friend. It's like, whatever stands out usually holds clues for something very important in terms of like, there's something there for you to regroup, to dive deep into. And so that's just something that I just want to at least give a voice to, because I'm like, I feel like I don't have much. And I don't want this episode to just be like, oh, I'm going to share everything Alvin's done or whatever. That's not the point here. I want to make this more practical for you, my friend. So you really get something out of this as well that you can take with you feeling empowered. And so again, so like highlights. So touching on that for myself, I think for me, a lot of things have involved with people. Definitely trying new different things, trying out events, going on some solo adventures, and even meeting like new faces, new people that have made an impact in my life, who I've seen, who have inspired me in lots of ways. Um, and I've also connected with new communities as well. And so in that regard, I feel like, it was interesting. I remember my guidance, I was regrouping with my mentor, and in that regrouping, my guidance has shared this imagery with me. And it was basically like there was a bag of marbles that was like being poured out onto a flat surface on the ground, and the marbles were kind of hitting the ground and moving in all directions. That was a very powerful visual that I still remember, and this was like a couple months ago, uh, maybe a month ago, when my guidance gave me this particular impressions. Like there's certain impressions I think, like there's a lot of impressions I get on a daily, with my team, but there's always a very few that stick with me. I don't know if you can relate with this or if you in your own experiences, but there's something for me that there's some stuff that it just stays ingrained, and I know there's something there for me. So that's why I always like I never worry about having to remember it because it's like ingrained. Like I always think back to those few experiences, uh, and so that analogy was a good way of like as far as where I'm at and where I have been with like my social life and just and you know um kind of prefacing a little bit more of like later on, but like I think even part of like into the new year, and not even just into the new year, but I think it's more so moving forward. I definitely sense this need for myself to to be more involved with people, to work with more people in different ways. I don't want to just assume it has to be a certain way, but like I just need to be involved and mix with people. Like for me, I know I had that tendency to want to be like a hermit. And I get it. There's a time and place for resting and recharging, and that's definitely important. But I know for me, I get fulfillment and I can feel nourished and recharged when I'm talking to people, when I'm giving of myself to people, when I'm being of service. So like from that perspective, from that insight right there, it's like, okay, I need to do more. And I know I'm going to have to step out of my comfort zone to really step into that and really be open to what the universe, what spirits can is laying out for me to help meet that need for myself. Other highlights have included going on various retreats, especially my mentor, one of my other mentors that goes on tour, about twice, maybe three times a year. But it's like a weekend retreat. But oftentimes I've gotten a whole lot out of them, and it's just been great. It's just the insights and the just raising my vibe with like the people there through techniques and just being like really genuine, authentic people, man. Like it's something that you, I can't, I can't explain. I mean, I'm sharing, sharing it with you, but when you feel it, you feel it, you know it, you understand it. Like that's a whole completely different thing altogether. And that shit's solid. If I have to be honest, solid in the sense of it feels secure. I feel secure inside. And then I've done a multitude of online study groups and courses. Like one of the things, like if you're involved with the Wayshores College, one of the things that many people that are involved will host and have online courses via Zoom. And, I've had many groups that have met weekly. I've had other groups that have met bi-monthly. I also have one of the things I do routinely where I meet with my meditation people, my folks. This is a study group that's once a month. I actually have two things. So one of my actual um, mentor that I decided to work with closely, and then of course with one of my other mentors, and then my other mentor that does the weekly regrouping for the community, the people that are involved and do this kind of spiritual work of working with guidance, working with intuition, communication, purpose, etc. And then one other significant thing that stood out to me as well that has been a highlight, especially particularly when we're transitioning from that energy from the last spiritual year. Now I'm trying to remember what it was for last year. It might have been, was it elevation, innovation? No, no, no. It was free flowing, I believe. But whatever the case may be, but the emphasis here is moving into this year, sphere of inspiration. Something that I'm noticing now, and I don't know if you can relate with this, but as I'm working on improving how I work with my own goals and setting my own direction, it's I find myself actually receiving, I can be aware of, I can recognize when I'm actually getting backing and support for the goals that I set out for myself. I've been noticing that lately, at least in the start of this spiritual year. There's been a lot of support for me that I can feel, that I have felt from people in physical bodies, but especially, and what's really important to me, from my spirit guides. And so those has been some of the highlights I know for me so far that have been really impactful for me. Like I said, there's many more. I'm sure I might throw in some more. We'll see. Sometimes as I'm sharing, in this episode, I get some insights. My guidance will just slip in something. I'm like, oh, okay, let me talk about that. So there's that. So I encourage you to think about that. What have been your highlights, right? And I want to add this as well. I want to take a little interjection here. It's always good to do that because to me, this is where the past serves a purpose, right? It's like those nuggets of wisdoms. Like when I look at moments that have been highlights, those are like for me good references or a barometer for what do I need and want inside of myself. That's something that I want you to think about as well when you're thinking about these highlights. How did it make you feel? What was going on? Kind of like look at it from that bigger picture perspective, right? And what I mean by that is like you might recall a specific memory, but from a higher level, is you enjoyed that moment of, let's say, you gave of yourself, you were being of service to somebody, you were really adding something positive to someone else's life. Maybe that right there gives you personal fulfillment, right? And in which case, okay, how can I, have more of that? Again, we may revisit this part later. I feel like I'm going to jump a little bit here and there, as far as my own flow, and I got my little agenda here, but it's okay. But yeah, just like the past holds clues. So as you're working through this, think about that. Like these are not just like, you don't feel like you have to do this because you're supposed to or because you observe other people doing it. Because I know for me, that's definitely been the case for me when it comes to like at some point, like with goal setting, because I observe a certain ways how my friends and how they do it and whatnot. And I get into this comparison and I don't have those clear motives within myself of why is Alvin setting these goals? Is he doing it because he thinks he's supposed to? And if you find yourself in that equation, if you find yourself thinking that way, I want you to stop, step away from it, honestly, even like feel free to invite you to just, kind of pause and just step away from this podcast episode, you know, because if you're listening to this and what we're kind of working through together for this episode, I would like for you to be in that place like you're doing this for you and because you want to. You sense a need to, not because you're supposed to. Because that's something that has been a major learning thing for myself, is that because at the end of the day, when it comes to change, true change is inside out. What's sustainable is that people are doing things for themselves. It may sound kind of selfish, but we have our lives to live, for goodness sakes. Ain't nobody else going to live my life. Nobody else going to live your life. So why is it wrong to want to do for yourself? Does that make sense? It makes sense to me. At least as far as doing for yourself, right? Making sure your motives are clear. You know why you're doing it. You have that desire. You have that need that knows that needs to be met. So the past holds a lot of clues, my friend. So that way it can help steer your direction in the future of more or less where you want to go towards, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit more later on this episode, because it's definitely, using the clues from the past to help you set your direction for your future, especially because I know of times I feel like I'm not sure where I want to go at times. But we've had experiences, we've gone through stuff, and I think it's important, although the bad stuff, it has its place from a constructive point of view. But here I want to emphasize more of like the positives. Let's reinforce the positives here. Because man, I can't tell you how many times I've been taught in my programming to get so fixated on the things that are wrong or bad, things that are like minute as hell. And yet with my programming, particularly, it's like, imagine, it's like if there's 10 people, 9 people gave me compliments, and then one person gave me a constructive criticism, or maybe it was an insult or something. And then I would focus on that one person and forget what everybody else, the positive feedback that I've gotten from everybody else. It's like looking at it from that example, that point of view, if that makes sense, my friend. And so let's move on even further. So again, looking at 2025, right? What have been some of your accomplishments for 2025? And with accomplishments here, big and small, but especially let's give a voice to all those tiny accomplishments, especially if there were moments when you felt uncomfortable, but you did it anyway. Maybe that might be considered something big for yourself. Maybe that might not be a tiny accomplishment, but whatever the case may be, even just like day-to-day stuff, man. Like for me, like the act of like, let's say when I go out on shift, when I'm out on my bike, when I go to the office, get my things, regroup my partner, we head out, do our thing, and then come back. For me, I think what's a tiny accomplishment, but honestly, I would say it's a big accomplishment, is that I made it back safely with my colleague. And I always try to, move myself with like more presence and taking things in moment to moment, living a breath at a time. And so, even like if it's like, say like routines, I kept doing my routines, like, perhaps you have some good routines and give yourself a pat on the back for that, because I don't know about you, but I've been conditioned to never give us enough like much attention to like what's the little things that are going well. It's always like those tiny, very minority, the stuff that's like really our room for improvements, or just I look at those tiny wrongs or like these judgments, and I let that just kind of start to override everything. And what good is that? Especially like in my relationship with myself, what the hell good is that? It doesn't serve me, and I know sure as hell it's not going to serve anybody else. So for me, some accomplishments for myself, I've come a long way when it comes to my fitness routines, especially because being in a job that's been physically demanding, being at the age of 33, I'm someone that has a lot of concern about my quality life from the point of view of my physical body. I know there are a lot of things that are going to come with aging, and I know that's something that's going to I'll slowly have to come into acceptance and ease in through that. And that's something that's my own process, right? I think for everybody, they have to work through that stuff. But I'm a firm believer that we can do immensely a lot of things to slow down the aging process. And I think that's the best case scenario any of us could ever ask for, if I'm being honest. That's the best case scenario. And I think that's in congruence with the natural laws, to be honest. Especially like understanding like what our physical bodies, what they're capable of. Because they're vehicles powered by the soul, you and me, limitlessness. Just an abundance of energy, dog. It's crazy. A bunch of energy. To me, it's just like unlimited power, unlimited. It's just understanding that I know we're working in a limited world, but I know there's like just because we live in a limited physical world, we live in a spiritual world that's very unlimited. And there's some integration, there's some interwovenness, there's something, right, that can mix and mesh together, that can, you could say, maybe alchemize, that can radically transform the material world. So, sorry, I kind of a little expanded too much into that particular accomplishments, but I just wanted to just share that point, because concepts and perceptions and belief systems, I mean, I'm just sharing your mind. And I just hope to open up something, especially something like that, that's a huge part of the human experience. And I just want to share that with you, my friend. So moving on to other accomplishments, I've been involving myself more with the college, especially in their marketing division, looking for and trying to work on programs and stuff to really reach out to more people who desire to work with their spirit guides, with their intuition in this way, in the tools and techniques that the college offers. So it's something that for me, it's been so much value ever since I've been to my first retreat program back in 2017. It might have been, I think it was 2016. It was in December, if I'm not mistaken. And ever since then, it has transformed my life. And so now I want to help share this message with other people, because I know it can do the same for many. Now, I understand as well, it's not the one size fits all. It's not for everybody, and that's okay. Because guess what, baby? Everybody's unique. Everybody's unique. Everybody's unique. And so with that, everybody has their own unique needs. What works for you that may not necessarily work for me, and vice versa. And then for me, another accomplishment, it has been, oh, man. Here's what I wrote down here on my agenda. I modified my own personal systems. And you could say my own personal systems for daily living, for working, how I do my podcasts, etc. Like working like my day job, but then also my side hustles and stuff like that. And just refining how I move day to day, how I dance in this game of life, in the rhythms and routines that we all have to play. These are what I consider laws, right? The rhythms and routines are laws of the universe that you and I have to flow through. We have to go through. Can't fight that, can't cheat that. That's why it's a law, right? Think like gravity, for example. So, and as far as another accomplishments, did a lot with my finances, although I feel like there's a lot more room for improvement. But finances is definitely important, and I'll share on this because when it comes to your needs, we have our material needs and we have our spiritual needs. We have our material needs to to meet for our own survival. We have our spiritual needs to meet for our own fulfillment, for our own happiness. But often at times, what I've observed, and at some point I was there, where meeting the needs, my physical needs, is competing or taking over my responsibility to meet my spiritual needs, if that makes sense. So, like, imagine somebody who's living paycheck to paycheck and they're stuck in survival. They're barring themselves, and I'm not saying this to point fingers. I'm just stating what's objectively, right? They're barring themselves from actually thriving. They're caught in survival and they're not really thriving. And why I share this is because I think it's important. I don't know where you are at, my friend, with your finances, but if you feel like there's room for improvement, which I think for many of us there is, definitely set that as a goal. Look at like I'm gonna plug in a little something here. There's no sponsorship in this episode. Just want to make this perfectly clear. But there's one particular finance book that has helped a lot, and really, this lady, this soul here, she really puts it in really good perspective in terms of like taking those action steps. So if you're someone who wants to like level up in your finances, no matter where you are, I want you to I recommend this book. It's called Add a Zero, and the author is called Rose Han. Rose Han, Han. Again, the title is called Add a Zero. I think it's like $20 or $25, or it might be $29, something like that. But I highly recommend that because it's important to put yourself in that position so that in such that way that you're not stuck in survival. You're not stuck in survival. You're getting your basic needs met, and then also being able to have the time and energy to work on your spiritual needs so you experience that greater fulfillment. This right here is so important because this is part of the huge dance of life that many people, I want to say all of us, I'll just say many, right? Because I want nuances. But many people had the challenges. I know this is part of my challenge. This is something I'm working on. I'm not perfect in this, right? But I've done a lot of work on myself to be able to get to this place to be sharing this with you. So definitely, level up in that because that right there, that survival, that fight or flight, that right there can be, well, it's well intentioned, right, for the survival, but that can be a real detriment, debilitating for the spiritual need, for your soul part, your feeling part. And you cannot ignore that. If you don't, like in my experience and what I've observed, if that isn't being met, life situations will happen in such a way that adjustments are made to help meet those needs. And the extreme forms that I've seen have happened, that I observed have happened, have been a lot of tragedies, a lot of like physical health stuff coming up, you know? And even with physical health, I'm like, man, I'm super glad that, health wise, I feel like I'm kind of, this is why I'm kind of jumping all over the place because now I'm just thinking about also for upcoming New Year as well too. So bear with me here, my friend. But that's something also important as well too. All this, again, to emphasize, taking care of those important steps to experience more greater spiritual fulfillment, because we can't ignore that. Otherwise, there's a price to pay. There is no free lunch in the universe, my friend. If your needs aren't being met, you will pay the price. And it may not be pretty. And I don't want you to have to experience that. You shouldn't have to experience that. So I'm equipping you with the awareness and to put in your radar. And this is from my own experiences, my friend. This is no BS here. And then one more accomplishment I'll personally share, and even a highlight was just finding this new work opportunity that I've been involved in since February, where I'm literally where I get paid to ride a bike. And for me, when I think about that I attribute so much to manifesting. Actually writing down and clarifying what is it that Alvin wants? What is he looking for? Because I was wanted to look for a new job, something steady, something good. And I just wasn't finding. I was having challenges and it's tough. But I took some time to organize myself by listing out for myself so I can see it, what it is I'm looking for. And when I look at this job, it's like a lot of the key important ones that to me I consider non-negotiables. And this requires being really reasonable. At least for me, when I was approaching this, I had to be really reasonable about all like what I was looking for, right? And for yourself if you're being realistic or not. It's that intuitive sense. But a lot of things that I was asking for when I wanted to set that intention, I am getting out of this current job. So when I think about this work, it helps me to move with more gratitude, with more presence. It reminds me that the law of attraction works. You and I are one with the laws of the universe. You can create anything you want in your life. And sometimes there are times when I don't believe that. But those are just moments. But whether it's just looking at that or I have an experience that proves otherwise, and that's confirmed by what I feel inside my core, tells me, we can manifest anything. There is no freaking excuse. There is no excuse. I'm just sharing this because from my experience, my friend, I firmly believe this to my core. And so, and I'm like I said, this is why it's, going back to what I shared about looking at your past, looking at the things that have gone well. Because I'm sure you'll find ways that if you do that, what are some ways that you have manifested? You have worked with the law of attraction in your favor that helped you manifest something you never would have thought possible. Say if you were to rewind, moments in time, right? So look for those kind of clues, right? I imagine as you're working in this process, kind of think like that spiritual detective, right? Have your detective hat on, look into your own spiritual life, And I say this because to bring out the childlike part within you, because you don't want to make this too much of a heavy, serious process, because that's not going to help anybody. But tap into your childlike part. What would your inner child, how would they approach this process? Take that energy into this process. And so, and I'm grateful that, there have been some challenges, especially in the later part of 2025. But even just looking at other experiences that I've had before, and even if you're listening to this, you are a resilient individual. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here right now. playing the game, still living life. So I'm saying this to say, give yourself credit, my friend. And so, and to say that too, no matter what happens, you got this. You got this, my friend. You got it. And then um, and I guess another question you can ask yourself as well is that, what have been, I kind of started sharing into a bit of this, but for yourself, what have been some of your challenges from this year and anything significant that you would have done differently? But what I want to emphasize here, the point is just like, not to look at it like, why did I do this? Or that was a waste of time. There is no waste of time or waste of whatever happened in terms of what you experience. If you look back and regroup and get that nugget of gold from that past. I mean, we all have moments where I feel like I would have wasted my time. But if I regroup back on that, okay, what would I have done differently? Okay, I'll do this differently. I remember the time, like, I would just, I remember I would have rough mornings waking up and I'm like always feeling scattered and all this. And and at some point I thought, okay, what I would do differently so that I'm not like sloppy at work. Like even sometimes with like trying to get ready in the morning so that I get, on time with my job. Sometimes I'll be late. Is to make sure I prep all my clothes, all my stuff the night before. Those kind of like what I would do differently for the purpose of improving your quality of life. Improving your quality of life. And that's really the goal here. I firmly believe our life is there for us and that the best quality of life, it's right there for us to claim. But it falls upon us to choose it. No one's going to choose it for us. No one's going to choose it for us. And so there's been a lot of, so it's a lot to unpack here in this episode. At least I'm looking through my agenda. I'm like, shoot, I haven't even just finished the first part here. But yeah, so that's just, some set of questions for you to just regroup on and think about. But with that sense of compassion and just for the sense of like what this process can help you do and achieve and, what they can do for you. And so, with the challenges that I've had this year, and I've already alluded to this, like I said, I'm jumping back here and forth, so bear with me here. But, I've been finding myself living more with more presence and really appreciating more what I have. And I'm grateful for that as well, because I know, man, I can get really caught up in life, experience, as all of us, which is okay. It happens. But that's why, living consciously, living a freedom-based lifestyle it's effort. It requires, taking those moments, and working through those moments where I may, quote unquote, slip up or mess up. But mistakes are stepping stones, ladies and gentlemen. Mistakes are just stepping stones. And I think for me, the less I get into making mores and all the big deals out of the stuff on my day-to-day, the better off I will be. Otherwise, I start inviting suffering into my life. There's growing pains, and I think that's natural. But where it starts to get, no. It's when suffering starts coming in. And to me, my understanding of suffering has been about focusing all my energy to the point where I'm exhausting myself in things outside of my control. And their emphasis is like wasting so much energy trying to control. Just thinking about that, the image of like what my body reflects is like tense muscles. Tightness everywhere, and that's not good. Want to be relaxed. Fluid like water. And that's something that I want to take with me into the upcoming year, And I guess to hear some of the questions that I want to ask for you, and I won't spend so much time here as we did the previous part. because this is from, at least as far as like me sharing, right? Like for my part. But here's some questions, I want you to consider for yourself as we move into the new year, right? What are your own personal intentions for the new year, for 2026? What would you like to experience? What would you like to experience more often? What are areas in your life where you can find improvement, where you find room for improvement for yourself? What adjustments to your routine would you like to make? And so these are some really important stuff. And it can be so easy for me to get caught up in like, oh, okay, new year and all this. And trust me, I deal with a lot of overwhelm at times. That I'm at a point where that's why like the whole coming back to and being more conscious and aware, like I'm there's I've come a long way, but I'm trying to take that energy everywhere I go, moving moment to moment, living a breath at a time, because it is from that place where I can achieve those goals. Because I have a lot of things I want to do. There's some things I need to do, and ultimately, whatever what it is, like whatever you're setting yourself to do, if you don't put time to it, if you don't set a timing on when you're gonna do it, it's never gonna be done. And that's something that's been a learning lesson for myself this year. I mean, I'm sure it's gonna be a thing later on. Part of life, the way I see it. But I think also, like routines have a place. But I think what also has a place is being fluid with routines, where you may have days where you take a detour and you don't take the usual route on your routines. Not to be rigid with your routines, but there is a foundational structure to work with as needed, unless something else different needs to happen. Right? It's like this balance of working with the structure, but then also going out and explore, which at times may often, especially like if it's like meeting my needs, may require me to like step out of my comfort zone. It may require me to do that. But because, like I said, routines, I know for me, it's very easy to get into that comfy vibration. Like, oh, okay, I'm doing the routines. And then at some point, if I'm not careful, it starts to feel monotonous. It starts to, all these things. And all of a sudden, I start to get into that vibration of just existing. But I think it's important that to treat each day like a new adventure. Remember what I was talking about, your childlike part, especially when I was talking about the process of, when you're evaluating your current year. But to use that energy of your childlike part, a new day, a new adventure, you know? A question, perhaps another additional question for you, my friend, is what would your life be like if you treated every day like a new year? Oh, that's a good one. That's definitely my guides coming in and chiming in with that one. What would your life be like if you would approach each day as if it were a new year? Happy New Year today. Because every day is a new chance. So, yeah, and just yeah, so going back to the routines and just working with that, because being careful not to be too comfy, because we have to flow with the changes, we have to flow with the currents, because things will happen in life that may shake us. But the more we practice being fluid and embody that like water, we can handle anything life hands, well, we can handle anything life throws at us. That is why it's important to embody water. Very important message there. And in a sense, and we are capable, because water is a symbol for all things spiritual. And I think as a soul, that's like a big quality of what we are as a soul. We're fluid, meaning we have that capability. It's not a lack thing. It's a more of an unfoldment, strengthening kind of a thing. Think like a muscle. You have muscles. You don't lack muscles. You just need to work them out at the gym. Same thing from that spiritual perspective. And so that to me right there is success when part of the many at least how to be more successful is to approach each day with that childlike, tapping into your childlike part, which may look different for you. And this is to say not to compare yourself to other people, right? And I mean, if you're gonna compare, make sure that whatever it is like the positive that you can try to like emulate for yourself. Like like whatever positive quality you see in somebody, you could ask, like, I'm gonna use the eye. What would Alvin's version of that look like? The quality I see in X, Y, and Z. What would Alvin's version of that look like? So I share that. So if you find yourself in that comparison, feel free to interject that negative thought pattern with that question. So I think it's important now that we take it back now to begin to wrap this episode up here. This is a lengthy one, but very necessary. So allow me to bring you up. Let's rise together and let's gain a bird's eye view for a moment into your life. With all this said and done, the New Year's, all the New Year's resolutions type of thing. I want you to think about this for a moment. Why this is all important. Or at least let me share with you why I believe this is all important. Planet Earth is a school, and this practices of like what I've been sharing with you of just like, in essence, is kind of getting a sense of where you've been, where you are now, and where you're going. All of this is just to work in balance with your past, present, and future. So ultimately, you're putting the control in your own life, or you could say you're it's about piloting, driving your own life, leading your own life, because that's our responsibility to ourselves. And it's important, like, something that I've been thinking about is that, we're all here experiencing life, experiencing unique lessons for our own spiritual evolution. And so we have our own life curriculum. Something that I want to bring more of into the new year is to place more emphasis and focus on my own life curriculum. Now, it's not that as if I haven't been doing it before. It's more about more consistently, with greater clarity, in such a way that there's more ease and more fun and more fulfillment. Not to make it too much of a serious, heavy thing, as I tend to do sometimes. Right? It can happen. And so for me, though, is to focus on my life curriculum and why I'm here, when you talk about life purpose. All this is important because there's a lot of things going out in the world. There's a lot of things going out, a lot of noise in the internet. And if you're listening to this, we're all exposed to the internet. We can't avoid it, right? We have to work with it. And part of the things that we have to work through is FOMO, or the fear of missing out. Like, I know that I'm not saying that that's your specific thing, but I know for me, it's a thing. It can get me caught up and distracted. But I want to focus more on what fulfills me, what I need to do for myself, so I can move forward and accomplish for myself. So I can live my best life, claim what's there for me. Tap in within, claim that, This is why I think this is all important. Maintaining direction. As a soul, you have direction. As a leader of your own life, you have direction. No one dictates how you live your life but you. Anything else people say, they're just suggestions. You can take it or leave it. Keep that same energy even with me. Whatever I say, take it or leave it. Hell, if you wanted to, you listen to all this and you thought, okay, it's nice. And do your thing. Great. Take it or leave it. It's all up to you, baby. It's all up to you. And so one of the things I'm going to work on to help keep my eyes on the prize, to keep my big picture focus there, because I know is in that place that my team can work with me better. They can help me manifest things in my life. The more clarity, the more powerful the manifestation. And the more I'm living and experiencing things that I want to be involved in, that nourish me, that make me feel full, that elevates me. And screw all the things that have nothing to do with me. Screw all that. And I hope you say the same thing for those things that pop up in your life. To say, screw that shit. I want to be involved in what I need to be involved in. Not somebody's script or concepts or whatever, their belief systems or all the happenings that's going on in the world. And so I had this idea, and you may feel free to adopt this. I use this application called Trello, Trello. And I have a board that's basically, I call it Alvin Zepeda's Big Picture. And there's a couple of columns that I'm kind of putting on there. And this is like a pivot or a checkpoint for myself. So if I find the need to recheck, like, imagine like you are an eagle. You know, an eagle at some point has to come down for food and to get things that they need for themselves, right? But then at some point, the eagle needs to soar back up. So like, you're the eagle, my friend. So like, I'm creating a system to, like, for myself so I can soar back up from that higher picture when at times I need to, because that right there helps me recharge, right? That's why I have my support systems. I have my mentors and stuff for that, to help me do that, to assist me. And just to make sure moving along. Just because of the simple fact, when life be life, and I know for myself, I can't say this, I can't speak for you, but I get caught up, but I need to come back to my big picture. I need to come back to my big picture. Because we are in this school, we are here to do some things, to be involved in things. That's why we're here. That is the collective, that is the reality for everybody. The beautiful thing is everybody got their own unique thing and their own path, right? That's why I shared that important piece, that big picture perspective. Planet Earth is like a giant school. And the more you start to see it that way, like I know I have, I mean, it's changed my life and how I see things and how I show up and how I interact with people. How I showed up for myself. So back to the Trello board. I haven't lost track, my friend. I'm still here. So a couple columns that I would suggest you could do. You can have a column they're like series of questions, but they're columns with these questions. So like, number one, who am I? And you can do different cards that you can create. Like, what are your values? What are your standards? You know, what are the things that you care about? What fulfills you? What nourishes you? And perhaps you may add things that are like a no, only for the perspective of like clarifying this is not it. And this is like to avoid. But I would avoid trying to use like nots and should nots or this, and focus on what actually turns you on, rather than focusing on, I don't want that to turn off. Emphasize the good, right? Is the key here. So who am I? Where do I want to be? And that could be what qualities within you want to self. Like, for example, I want to feel more confident in myself and interacting with people, like initiating interactions with people. Because there's times I want to say something, but I'm like, no, let me not say nothing. Because I like to communicate. I like to interact and engage with people. But I want to invite that more on my day out when I'm just out there roaming, you know? So think about it like that. Like, what are some qualities that you want to unfold more of? Type of thing. Maybe more patience. Maybe more consistency. Or perhaps more discipline. And then another question, I wrote this down, but I'm not sure, but I'll share it anyway, is where do I want to go? But honestly, that could also be rephrased, because another question that follows, I feel like that relates. That could just be the same column, is what am I building towards? I remember my friend once shared to me, it's like, a good friend of mine, he was like, life has no meaning, but we're here in life to actually add meaning to it, to create meaning. Right? It's like it's just, I mean I think it's that going back to what I mentioned of going down your own path that nobody else has to go but you, and it's uncharted territory because it's your unique path, right? And so there are things that, again, also just a reminder, think about we're here as a school. Think life like a school, because again, I always frame it that way because to me it makes sense. It just makes sense to me. What am I building towards? It's important to, again, we're in the school to gain something out of it, because what we put together for ourselves through our experiences, the wisdom, the growth, the practice, showing up, walking the walk, that's what we take with us. I call all that spiritual real estate. So that's something, another reason why I emphasize all this in the spiritual, because material things are great and they're great to have, nothing wrong with them, but they're just a means to an end, because we don't take all the material stuff with us. But what we do take with us is what we built for ourselves spiritually. That right there is timeless, eternal. That stays a part of you for all time. And you're an eternal being, my friend. We are eternal beings. We have been, we are, and we always will be. One with all. So anyway, what are you building towards? Like for me, something that I'm building towards is like, how can I build community? How can I bring forth together? In such a way that I can share more of what I've put together, my knowledge, my wisdom with people to help them live their lives, live their best lives. How can I expand my service? Like that's something that I'm working towards and expanding on that. And 2026 is going to be pretty interesting, pretty bright for me. And that's something that I'm tending, So those are some of the columns that I'm putting. And I think my process with all this though is that it's meant to be very dynamic. So like it may evolve. I might make adjustments. I may throw some cards because I might have actually achieved it. But these are like higher picture, like higher level, big picture of what it is that I'm going to do. What I'm, what's happening from that point of view. Like I know like my team, my helpers, how they see things. This is like my way of getting to that level. But again, like I said, this is something that I'm attempting to do so I can keep my eyes on the prize, keep my big picture in perspective daily. And this takes effort, conscious effort, staying present, moving with presence. Like all that, I think there's a price to pay, but it's a price worth paying. I'm telling you that right now. Because I'd rather be living my own life and leading my own life than having to wait or ask for or having to depend on somebody else for that. And that is a belief system that doesn't work for anybody. But yeah, that's just a little something there. Feel free to tweak it as you want. That's just a little bits and pieces. I'm going to refine it as I'm working through it as well. And all this to say now to fully close this episode, and even though I mentioned that, life is like a school, right? But I think the traditional school settings got it twisted though. Like, never use that as a model because it's not about, don't ever see yourself as behind or ahead in life. You have your own unique path. You are never behind. That's just some belief system that doesn't work, in my opinion. So I say all this to say, right, with the understanding that not to, at least for me, not for myself, it's like not to be so hard on myself, like, okay, I'm better supposed to do this. In all this, I have to be very careful and aware of my motivations and the conversations I hear. I'm just setting the groundwork from that bigger picture perspective. And yet, I'm going to have to take this day by day, live a breath at a time. That's all I could ever do. That's all I could ever ask for you or of you. It's just live a breath at a time, And, one of the things that gave me some sort of peace as well is that No matter what happens though, where we are in our own journey, in our own evolution, everybody's gonna make it. And I'm gonna share this as well too. This always gives me comfort as well and helps me relax. Is that you have a right to grow spiritually at your own convenience. That's why there's no such thing as ahead or behind in life. You have your own path. If you're walking the same path as somebody else, then perhaps you're ahead or behind because you're in the same path as somebody else. But then you're not living your life. You're not being authentic to yourself. And what's the point of that? However, if you're treading your own path, going your own way, that requires going into uncharted territory, how can you be ahead or behind anybody if nobody else has gone down that path? Does that make sense? And so, all this to say, take whatever has resonated with you, any small thing, maybe a couple things. Maybe I would hope that perhaps you have one tiny action item you can do for yourself. And I invite you to follow through on that. But I would ask that you do it for you, though. Again, I want to go back to like the motives piece and all of this. Especially like when it comes to like New Year's resolution, it's like always seems that thing, oh, we got to do it. Like, oh, and then some people get turned off by it and don't want to do it, which is understandable. But because of what I've been through in my life, I understand and see the value and necessity of this process in this time of year of transitioning where this is talk about change and whatnot. But change is constant. It's always happening. Change is the one big constant. So just take it day by day. And I think if anything as well too, something else to think about, or at least something I want to share with you. Because at the end of the day, I think what's really important is that as you're moving through your days, notice how many up days and down days you have. Down days are like where you kind of feel off, you're not feeling your best, you're feeling, a lot of emotions. Up days where you feel super solid, you feel smooth, you feel like you're kind of moving through your day fulfilled, happy, content. Right? And notice like what happens more often. Do you find yourself having more up days or down days? If you're having more up days, then you're pretty much on track with your purpose and you're doing the thing. You're living your purpose. You're doing it. However, if you're having more down days, and this is where it gets into the territory of suffering, suffering, then that's when is opportunity, an invitation to make adjustments. And oftentimes the adjustments are something small. It's not like you have to like jump over a hurdle, do a hula hoop, run a lap around this track and field, do a silly dance to do one simple thing. I say that because sometimes I make it so damn complicated and I feel like I have to do X, Y, and Z, other people's concepts and belief systems and stuff. And I'm like, what's one simple thing perhaps that you can make an adjustment to? And sometimes, like I said, oftentimes it's like one small tiny tweak can make all the difference, especially when that tiny tweak is being made with consistency. Oh, that right there can transform everything. It can transform a lot. So talking about the up days and down days, right? Just having talked about all that. Something that in the recent online study group I had with my good friend Richard, one of the things that he learned, and he's an old timer. He's like, I believe, in his 80s, I believe. Richard's been listening to this. I apologize if I got it wrong. But one of the things that he's learned in his life is that he could really, like, in terms of how he can improve, is that how like inviting more time to enjoy and have fun. And I'll even say that, and so as far as like if there's anything to take, if there's one thing I would ask you to take, maybe that, into your 2026. How can you invite in more fun and fulfillment and enjoy, just like enjoying, Or another question, actually. What are the things that I'm doing, or what are areas in my life that are holding me back from enjoying where I'm at? Using Richard's words here, enjoying the passage of time. Or what's keeping me from having fun? Because I don't know about you, but I've come to find out that, man, I can be my own worst party pooper. Pooping my own or raining on my own parade. That's a tough one. And that's been a learning moment for myself. And so I think that's a very powerful one, because life's meant to be great in light of all the stuff that's happening. And so I hope that, if you if you made it this far, this episode, my friend, thank you so much. This is one of my longest episodes ever, I think, that I've done. I mean, quite fitting though, for especially an episode that I want to do for the end of the year type stuff. Um, yeah, for me, all this is important because I want to live my best life, and I'm at this place now where I'm having more concern. I'm unfolding more respect and sincerity with myself, so that I can experience greater fulfillment and be involved in the things that I want to be in, that I need to be involved in. And I would want the same for you and my neighbors. It's like a lot of noise out there, man. At some point, it's just like within me, and I hope that whatever you're dealing with, at some point, you could say, I'm done with this BS. I'm done with this pattern. I'm done with this groove of energy that I dug so deep in, and I'm ready to create a different one for myself. And it's not going to require much. And as I said, everything's going to be okay. You'll be fine, because you're going to make it just as much as your neighbors and your neighbors' neighbors and everyone else. We're going to make it. So there's no reason to put any pressure. Again, I say this because from experience, no need to put some pressure on myself to try to get, I gotta do this or I'll default back to that, what my friend Richard shared with me is like, how can I enjoy the passage of time more? Because it's in that place where I'm actually living my purpose. I'm doing what it is that I've come here to do. I'm living it. I'm embodying it. I'm practicing. And so, my friend, as we're drawing near to the end of 2025 and moving on to the future, look to all the things that are going great, and let's put some greater emphasis and let's reinforce all the good things that are happening. And I would wish nothing but the best for you in your journey. And just know that you have support. Maybe perhaps, in physical bodies, but you sure do have some support from the other side in the spiritual realm. If you doubt that or not sure, follow the chills. You have all the forces out there in the universe to help you succeed. There are more forces to help you succeed than there is not. Claim it. It's right there for you. What was that quote? Happiness, success, and abundance are already yours. All you need to do is be a master of yourself. Might be a slight paraphrasing, but those are the words of the founder, Dr. Francisco Cole, the one who founded the Wayshores College back in the 1960s. I want to impart that word, those words of wisdoms to you, my friend. And this has been another episode of Spiritual Engineered. I'm your host, Alvin Cepeda, signing out. And as always, take care, my dear friend, and a happy new year to you.